He has already, as I said earlier, made everyone sit up and take notice. And Ayaz, what's been beautiful about Lakshya Sen, and I've interacted with him, after his World Championship medal, for example, after the Commonwealth goals and in between, is that he's so humble. I mean, we are seeing this breed of new Indian athlete that is, one, very comfortable in their skin. They are not intimidated on the big stage, but they're also very humble, and they're not that fussed with the stardom that comes along with these big titles. The other thing I feel about Lakshya Sen that stands out is that despite his demeanor being so coy, he has that great hunger in his belly and has been able to produce those performances despite facing some of the world champions.
Well, I think that's really the hallmark of all the athletes that you mentioned for this award, of course, but also a growing number. Is that in India, you would normally have found athletes in crunch situations under pressure, they would wilt. That's been the story of Indian sport. That seems to be changing. In fact, I mean, I don't want to take pot shots. Cricket has been my livelihood. But you find that the Indian cricket team is actually wilting under pressure with everything going for it. And while all the other athletes, the badminton players, Nikhat Zareen, Neeraj Chopra, of course. Neeraj Chopra, to my mind, is a seminal moment. He's a seminal chapter in the history of Indian sport, perhaps in the history of India.
Yes, absolutely.
Because he's just opened up a whole new vista of self-belief. If he can do it, why can't the others? The guys they may not be javelin throwers, they may be high jumpers, they may be badminton players, they might be even sprinters in the years to come who will say, hey, if Neeraj could do it, why can't I try to do it, I think that's been the big change. You name all these athletes, Nikhat Zareen, she's had to fight a lot to get into a situation where she can be competitive or she can get into competitions. Lakshya Sen, Sharath Kamal is one of the guys you mentioned. He's part of the...
I'll come to him in just a bit. Ayaz, stay with me.
I'm just saying that
you mentioned
all these
Nikhat
guys
Zareen.
are...
Absolutely. The galaxy of stars and sports stars that India is producing now is so vast. It just fills your heart. As someone who's tracked sports for, over a decade and 17 years, to have those icons to talk about, because we were hungry for those icons to come through. Let me talk about Nikhat Zareen. And Rajaraman, I'm coming back to you because, again, you've seen her growth over the last few years as someone, who had to suffer some setbacks, to put it, in a mild way in her career, to just show that self-belief and continue to chip at it is the reason behind her success as well. Just take us through how you see her growth, especially over the last year.
I think she could have wilted. She could have faded away from the scene, especially when she didn't make it to the Olympic Games team in Tokyo. She was devastated. She would have liked to go there. She wanted a trial, and unfortunately for her, didn't do too well when she got the opportunity. She had to fight for it. And it looked like she was going to lose interest. But then for her to stay focused, for her to concentrate on what she can do really well, and take the opportunity when it came along, is fabulous. I think that World Championship gold medal will go a long way in making Nikhat a household name like Mary Kom was. She has it in her to stay long. She's hungry, and she's brilliant at what she does. And she's very, very analytical. The best part is that she says she stayed back to bounce back and then do well at the World Championship. I think the Commonwealth Games gold medal was a given because at the Commonwealth level, boxing and even badminton, I dare say, are not really challenging sport. You have to still win. But Nikhat, with the World Championship gold, I think she told us all that she has the hunger, she's got the belief, and she's got the ability to be the best in the world.
Absolutely. Let me talk about Achanta Sharath Kamal now. Ayaz, you were talking about him. Before I go to Sharda, you want to complete what you were wanting to say about Kamal?
No, I think it's quite remarkable. This man's urge to compete just keeps growing rather than diminishing. He's been around for 2 decades. And it just seems to be, it's not about getting better at the sport. That is, that's one thing of being a very high level performer. So you have to maintain that standard. But unquenchable, appetite for being at the elite level, competing all the while, win or lose, it doesn't matter. He's there ready for the next competition. And what is simultaneously happening is he's becoming a mentor for so many young table tennis players that are coming along. Table tennis was a sport which was almost extinguished. If you look back 10, 15 years ago, it's coming back, and I think India should be should aim to be amongst the top countries playing the sport. And if they aim to be there, then they need guys like Sharath Kamal, not just as players, but also as inspiration and role model.
Sharda, in 2006, Sharath made his debut at the Commonwealth Games and at that time went on to win the men's singles title, the first Indian to do so in the category at that time. And then, 14 years later, 15 years later, to repeat that performance, can you think of any other story in Indian sport quite like this?
In terms of success, it seems again it's one of those names that he sort of hung on, and he's literally seen a transition of Indian sport over these last 2 decades. So we are talking about an era where, as Ayaz was saying, we would crumble under pressure, and Sharath has stayed competitive, stayed involved, and like Ayaz is saying, all the athletes, the younger athletes that came through, Satyan, who's playing with him, such an inspiration. Because of the fact that he's still around, he's still involved, and he still sort of competes hard. And even though the Commonwealth Games TT may not be of the standard that the Asian Games is, you still have to win the matches, you still have to clean out the points. And the fact that he's got such a big bucket full of medals, it's almost like TT is not a sport that is for you think that 40-year-olds play it, but I mean, you didn't think that about tennis either, but anyway, but he's there, so he's showing you what you can do despite everything, despite when he started playing competitively, when he started competing at the Commonwealth level, Indian table tennis was not anywhere. It didn't have the kind of performances that it has now. He showed, he just sort of hung through and he fought hard. So he's a great fighter. And if only we could get all, younger table tennis players to see his longevity and his endurance, literally, in a sport that is so tough to compete in and to stay at the highest level, to be pitching for medals, whatever it is, whichever competition he's in. He'll never give up.
Yeah, and that's really the big lesson to take away from Sharath Kamal. Never give up. And I remember speaking to him before the last Olympics, and there was a buzz that this would be his last and he would retire. And he's like, everybody keeps asking me to retire, but I'm not going anywhere. And a year later, the Commonwealth Games, this Commonwealth Games were his best performance yet at 40 years old. Finally, let me talk about Ramesh Babu Pragnananda. Sharda, I'm coming to you first up on him. What a prodigy. Yes, there hasn't been that big title, but for him to be beating Magnus Carlsen repeatedly in one competition, he did it 3 times in a row this year. That's just enormous.
Pragnananda is almost like he's won all his big titles, and his big performances have come in rapid and in blitz chess. And it's almost like he's a 2020 kind of a chess player but he completely belongs on the stage. He's not overawed. There's an online chess tournament going on as we speak. I mean, a league going on as we speak too. There's a tournament, I think 23rd, 25th, and then there are 2 more events to go. And he's there in the running. He's sort of number 3 on the list of contenders. So he's unafraid, and that's the great thing about him. He's a completely Indian product. He comes from Chennai. He comes from Vishwanathan Anand's city, and he is that. Maybe he is going to be the next sort of Vishwanathan Anand sort of level of player.
I've got a final